Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. My name is Stephen Clark and I'm joined as always with Nick Ponte. How are you, Nick?
Hello, yes, it's the hottest day of the year today. I think it's like 27 degrees outside. It's even hotter than Spain. So yeah, coming inside for a bit of cool off.
And we've got a hot interview today, mate. We've got the guys from REWD Group on, Laurie and Alex, and they've done phenomenally well. They've went from pretty much nothing a couple of years ago to 200 units, 200 properties in their portfolio within two and a half years. And this is since I met them a couple of years ago down in Birmingham. I had a good laugh with them, good crack, went out for a few drinks and a meal and stuff. And just to see their journey over the last couple of years is nothing short of phenomenal. And they don't hold back. They share it. They tell you what their biggest kind of leap was and how they managed to get traction and private investors, how they managed to grow, didn't they? They don't hold back.
These guys are awesome. We actually we get the privilege of going up to their new unit. They got a place in Grangemouth, which a commercial unit that they've converted into like an event space and their headquarters, and they're really going for it. And we had a good chat with them there, and we've kind of lined them up for this kind of 3-part series because they've got so much going on. So in this series, we focus on the kind of buy to lets and going, like you said, up to buying portfolios. They bought a portfolio of 80 units. They're now up to about 200 units. How do you go from that point where you've got a couple of flats to buying portfolios? We go into a lot about the financing, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that's key. I think that's where most people get the stumbling blocks when they're thinking about scaling up their property business, because looking for the next deals with portfolios is like, how can I raise that a few $100,000 to buy that portfolio? And we ask them the questions and they answer it very honestly as well.
They're really genuine, honest guys. Laurie at the end there, he was like, he was telling us, even at that point where they're at now, where they've got staff, on the outside, it looks like everyone's ticking along great and they're doing phenomenally well. He's like, there's still days, where they struggle and they have problems like everyone else. So I think that's an important point to learn as well. But yeah, love talking to these guys. We'll just play the interview now, but there's definitely more to come from Alex and Laurie at REWD Group.
So guys, thank you very much for joining the Scottish Property Podcast. Laurie and Alex from REWD Group. Recently, you have been the most requested people to come on the podcast, and we know why, because you guys are doing phenomenally massive scale and growing a massive portfolio very quickly. So before we get into that, can you take a wee second to tell us a bit about your background and kind of what got you started in property?
Okay, yeah. So Laurie and I kind of both started out, probably going back about 10 years ago, we started in property, but really accidentally. The typical accidental landlord for me. I was traveling abroad with work a lot, so I rented out my house, and that was kind of it. Laurie had started a bit more deliberately than I, kind of just buying up a few properties, near where he lived. No particular strategy, no particular understanding the dynamics of how to run a property business, and no real intention behind it, just trying to get in a bit of property investment without really a clue what we're doing. But we both kind of got to a stage in our professional careers where it wasn't really working for us anymore. I had been traveling for about 14 years. I spent 4 years in Russia. I was in Azerbaijan for 4 years, 2 years in Norway before all that. And it was great. It was fantastic in my 20s. Had a great time, but you hit your early 30s, start to settle down. The thought of kids kind of coming into the equation, getting married and all that sort of stuff, and kind of felt like we were going to be at the mercy of a large corporation and wherever they wanted us to go. And I think Laurie had a kind of similar situation. So we both kind of came to that point, and we were, as friends from school and guys who hung about in a group when we were, out of the weekends or whatever, we were thrown back and forward ideas about getting into business. Both loved property. And we both kind of started researching it, doing a few courses, reading a few books, and we were back and forward ideas. We both started our own thing separately. We had no intentions of working together. And then it was my wedding the night before it, actually. I got a lead through Facebook for this 4-block ex-local authority flat. Looked like a good deal, but I just didn't have time to move it forward. So I asked Laurie if he could take it on, and kind of said, look, if you can do something, then, we'll go 50-50 or whatever. And, it so happens that he'd done a fantastic deal on it. That was our first one. We picked up 25k. was about seven grand refurb, and we refinanced it on a 60k val, so all our money out and a bit extra. And that was the start of it. You know, we just kind of went from there, and then quickly realised there's something in this. You know, we were just working and progressing much quicker together than we did separately. You know, we have very polarised skills. I'm quite analytical, and Laurie's very much business development focused, big idea type guy. So, you know, the combination of the two worked quite well. Laurie, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, sorry, I just meant to unmute myself. So, as X says, like, you know, we were kind of doing our separate things. Like, I took about, it was like 9 or 10 years, and I ended up with 3 buy-to-lets, and I thought I was the man, because like in my circle of friends, I had like 3 buy-to-lets, and like nobody else was doing property, you know. And I mean, really, I only kind of got into property because it was seen as like a kind of good return. So it was like, you know, save up 20, 30 grand, buy a buy-to-let, you know, save up another bit, you know, buy another buy-to-let. And it literally took me like 10 years to get to these 3 properties. And it was only really through sharing ideas with Eccles. You know, we were talking about completely exiting it when the government changed the legislation, the clause 24 or whatever it's called. And it was a big mindset shift, because I was ready to sell up and just pay down a big chunk of my home mortgage, but I had the realization that, like, well, that's not really going to change anything. I'll maybe have an extra grand a month, but like, that's not going to change the world, man. So just from bouncing ideas off each other, we decided to not exit buy-to-let, and we decided to go after it with massive scale. So here we are.
So this is where I met you. Well, I met you guys probably for the second time down in Birmingham about 2.5 years ago.
That's right.
Development course, and this is probably where we're at. So in 2.5 years, how many units have you got on your portfolio, so the fucking listeners know to listen to what you guys are away to go and say?
We've got 200 units now. That's residential buy-to-let.
Wow, that's a phenomenal amount of growth in such a short period of time. Yeah. Was that the aspiration? Was that the goals, to get something that big that quickly?
Well, that's maybe a funny story, and it's got a few different strands. But like initially, you know, everybody's got a vision board here. I don't know. We've got a few vision boards here at REWD HQ now. But I started off, first time I got my vision board was around about that same time where we met Stevie, and you know, I had this goal of having, like, I can't even remember now. I've actually got pictures of them somewhere in my OneDrive files. But the goal was like, you know, 10 units, 20 units, something like that. And then we kind of realised that, well, we've kind of already done that. That goal's no big enough, you know. So I then changed it to 100 units. But then after we'd done the Lanarkshire deal last year, it was like, this isn't big enough again, you know. So most recently, the goal's been 300 units in the last, like, 12 months or so. But again, because of the scale we've had in the last year, we've now just changed it to 1,000 units in the next 3 years. So by the time we're both like 40, we want to have 1,000 units in the portfolio. But the goals have changed, right, as they should, as you continue to grow. Yeah,
absolutely. You're different from what you were 2 years ago, from what you were a year ago. So yeah, they're going to constantly evolve. So what was the catalyst then, let's say, for going from being an average investor with a handful of properties in your buy-to-let portfolio to scaling up? Was it the Lanark deal that you spoke about there?
I think the catalyst was frustration, right? I mean, Laurie and I kind of dissect our journey as we go, but we kind of classify that first phase of, and it was, you know, over 2.5 years, most of the growth's come in the last 12 months, probably not even 12 months. You know, if you look back to before the Lanarkshire deal in October, we maybe had 40 units. And it was just constantly frustrating having to deal with all these individual lenders, trying to do your individual deals. It felt like a huge amount of work for not a lot of incremental gain as you were moving forward. And we just thought, you know, there must be a better way to do this. And we embarked on our first portfolio refinance. The first major step was just, let's get away from all these individual lenders with a criteria. And, you know, some of them don't like ex-local authorities, some of them won't deal with you if your property's worth less than 60k. You know, there's just, and it's constantly changing and adapting, and you're flipping between, like, your Precise or the Mortgage Works. They don't like more than 2 properties really in your portfolio. So, you know, it was frustration. We wanted a portfolio deal. We refinanced the whole thing with Bank of Scotland, which didn't really take us forward. But what it did do is open our eyes to portfolio lending and the power of having a relationship with one finance backer that will support your growth going forward. And the whole idea of, yeah, we don't like this type of property, or we can't invest in this area because, you know, this postcode doesn't compute, that goes away, and you know, you're kind of unshackled. And that's where the Lanarkshire deal came along, and you know, it's 83 properties, some of which is probably not the most desirable stock in the world, but you know, fantastic yield and investment.
So was that the first? Sorry, Alex. Was that the first portfolio that you bought then, the Lanarkshire one? And how many properties had you kind of acquired together before you then start investing in portfolios? Because a lot of people are quite scared at the thought of, you know, buying a portfolio. So, you know, what sort of stage did you get to before the portfolios?
So before we bought that portfolio, we had around about 40 properties cumulatively, and we bought a portfolio with more than 80 in it. So if you think about that, we're essentially buying, it's like buying a company that's twice the size of you, and being able to consume that, you know. So it is a massive step up. There's no way about it. There was so many sleepless nights for Laurie and I going through that process, and you know, you have to put out a huge amount of money before a portfolio. It's not like an individual deal where, you know, you just pass over the money at conclusion. You know, solicitors want the money in advance. You know, we had to do somewhere in the region of 60k worth of compliance work to get that, to get the compliance on that portfolio up to standard, so we could lend against it. And that was all money out the door that, you know, was gone if things fell apart. So, you know, it was a scary business, but, you know, we started big. Since then, we've done another portfolio of 15. We've got another portfolio of 40, due to conclude another portfolio of 11 shortly after that. Once you get the first one over the line, you know, it's the shackles are off. But
so
yeah, I mean,
going to the Bank of Scotland, have they not got like a minimum lending criteria before they can even open doors to you for a portfolio lending, then to get you into that realm?
No, Bank of Scotland, well, look, again, everybody's going to have their different limits and all that, but Bank of Scotland, basically, I think, I can't remember what the script is now, but I think it was like if it was a 200k loan, or like between 200 and 500k loan or something like that, they had a higher interest rate, you know, something like that. But as soon as you went over $500,000, you got a rate of like 2.35% APR. So, you know, like unrivaled, you know.
And is that capital repayment as well with the bank?
There's a partial amortization, which is over like 5 years, I think. I can't remember now, but something like that. I mean, it was just a case. I think 200k was like the minimum kind of loan value, you know. So yeah, you always need to have, like, I don't know, depending on the values, obviously, but say 10 units, £500,000 type thing, to get a tasty rate like that, you know. And then it's awesome for cash flow, obviously.
And then going forward from there, then does that open the doors for going forward? Do they fund the purchase prices, or do they fund the back end refinancing once you do the short term lending, or cash purchases, or how do you move forward now?
Well, we're talking Lanarkshire again, like, you know, that we couldn't have done Lanarkshire if it wasn't for our JV partners, right? And you know, that was absolutely essential to kind of catapult us forward. And we wouldn't be doing all of these different things that we are now if it wasn't for doing that Lanarkshire deal. There's so many different things that have just come out of that, you know. When you post that type of thing on social media, there's a few eyebrows raised, right? And yeah, it's led us to do a lot more things, including like just us demonstrating our credibility to get that type of deal over the line. And as Alex is talking about there, you know, in the last 12 months, we've had various other portfolio deals being brought to us now because people know that, you know, we're capable.
We do it, yeah. Aye. And so how did the Lanarkshire deal come about then? What was it? It was 80 units. So how did it take? I'm assuming that was off market.
It was. Initially it was on with an auction house, I'm sure, but then the vendors in the auction house fell out. Which knowing what we know now is not surprising, but it was pulled from the market because they fell out, and I think the sellers were just going to hold on to it, you know. But again, we were looking back at our goal, like, you know, how are we going to get to this number of properties, and we need to do things a little bit differently, right? So, you know, we just went and hunted down the guys that owned it, because there was no longer any agreement between the auction house and the sellers, and we just got in touch with the guy and said, look, you know, we're interested in buying if you're still interested in selling. We went and sat around the table, had a coffee in some, I don't know, a sports centre or something, and basically just agreed to do the deal there and then. And look, that must have been January. Is that last year? January last year, I think. And then it didn't get over the line until October. That's how long it took.
See when you did that, went for that meeting, you did that deal. I mean, I'm thinking to myself here, right? Okay, so you've got a few properties together, but you know that's going to need a significant amount of capital to get that deal across the line. So did you just go in there, wing it, then think, right? Okay, we've got a deal here. We need to go now find the money. Is that how it works, or did you have
if somebody offers you a fantastic opportunity, say yes, and then figure out how to do it, right?
Love it. I love it.
And that's the extent of it, man. It was like, holy shit, how are we going to do this, man? You know, we need to find JV partners, we need to speak to the bank. Great fun, though.
Take it back a wee step, guys. So get into the 40 units before you went for the portfolio. You know, you'd explained there, Laurie, on your journey. It took you 9 years to buy 3 buy-let properties by saving up the money. What capital did you have available to do the 40 units, and how did you grow? How did you get around the mindset shifts? Probably what I'm wanting to ask. To leverage private investors, go for more lending, all that kind of stuff.
I think you know, that was the first point. You know, we got educated on how to do professional property investment. You know, the strategies that you need to use, understand your purchasing strategies, understand your financing strategies. Private investment was a huge part of that. In fact, the first private investor we got was at my wedding. So that first 25 grand deal I spoke about, secured the night before my wedding. You know, we had no idea how we were going to buy it. Okay, it was only 25 grand. We'd have found it from somewhere. But Laurie and I had just kind of started our own portfolios, and we'd kind of spent our money that we had on that. So we didn't have available, and I just forked out a fortune on a wedding. So
here, Alex, you need to get married more often, mate. Good things happen at your weddings. Like, good deals happen.
Well, exactly. You know, REWD's, you know, really started from a seed at that wedding. You know? It's quite cool. And my wife doesn't like this story, by the way, because she kind of hoped that the wedding would be about her, but rather than the company.
No,
but anyway,
this is going to be the famous story that started REWD Group, and she'll be fucking sitting there pissed off like, Jesus Christ.
That's exactly the case.
So starting off and raising the private investors, like, how did you manage to kind of get? Because I think a lot of listeners will probably struggle to understand how you can attract private investors with not much credibility and track record, but you kind of just starting out and just building your own portfolio. How did you find that at the beginning?
I think, you know, Laurie and I had been sort of, as I say, we've been educating ourselves over the period of 6 months, and we had done a few deals. It wasn't like we hadn't done any, but we were very much talking a lot about what we were doing with our friends, and it raised a lot of sort of interest. You know, people, oh, right, you're getting into property. I've always liked the sound of that. And, you know, it was just a conversation at my wedding where one of our friends was like, I heard you were getting into property. It sounds really cool. Got a bit of cash, but you know, I'm going to be buying my own house in a year and a half, so you know, I can't really do much in the short term, can I? And I was like, well, actually, you know, you could lend us the money. First charge secured, you'll get a really good interest rate. You get nothing in the bank just now, and from there, it's a really easy sell when someone's got money in the bank doing nothing. You know, we offered 6%.
I was going to say, like, it was quite an easy sell. Because of this security, right? But I remember having this discussion with a guy at X wedding, and like X talking about like first charge security, and I'm like, aye, no problem at all. I didn't know what a fucking first charge security was, you know. And I remember like seeing these documents come through for the solicitors, and I was reading it, like trying to understand what all this meant, and I didn't know. And like X a bit more kind of savvy with all that kind of. Obviously, I get it now, you know. But that wasn't that long ago. And it's just another example of kind of throwing yourself out there, getting into it, and figure it out, because you're always kind of growing when you solve these problems, right?
No, absolutely. No, that's a good story, actually.
I'm curious to know, like, because I've never used investor finance, private investor finance, but when you kind of like approach somebody with a deal like that, do they do much? I mean, obviously you had a relationship, they were a friend, you know, they were at your wedding and all the rest of it, but with the actual deal that I know they're not investing in the deal, they're more investing just for a fixed return or whatever, but did he or she say, I want to know about these properties, I want to know where they are, I want to know, like, you know, what the tenants are like, or do they just kind of just put the trust in you?
I mean, you know, there was a very small conversation around that, but it was really, we were just saying, look, the end value of this thing's going to be 60 grand, right? It was a 2-bed, 4 in a block, ex-council, 60 grand all day long. You know, that's the value it's going to be. We're buying it at 25 and we're spending 7 grand on it. You know, you've got a solid security there. That was the extent of the conversation, you know. Yeah. They were like, aye, okay, sounds fine.
I'm assuming
Well, there you
knowing
go.
your audience is probably key as well, like knowing that the risk averse of your audience or the fact that they buy into you. Because I mean, I've been doing this podcast with Nick for a year and a half, and I still can't get money with this fucker.
Mate, well, you need
Sorry,
to
mate,
change. You need to
go ahead.
change the area. I mean, I'm not investing in Aberdeen, mate. The prices are still going down there. Everywhere else in the country, they're going up 10%. A month.
I think the important thing with private investors, and a lot of people look at the size of our portfolio and the amount of money we've got in play and stuff, and assume that we've got this rich Saudi backing us somewhere, and it really isn't. You know, we don't have that many high value loans in play. It's mostly smaller investments. It's not high net worth individuals, although we are starting to get contacted by a few now, and that's a bit of a different story, but. Most of it's just like a broader connection with people, and you know, some people start working with you, they start talking to their friends, and they start, you know, building a bit of a network of people who are interested in doing a bit of business with you. And you know, there's so many people with money in the bank doing nothing. You know, it really is an amazing opportunity if you can find the deals and put it together. You know, Laurie and I always talk about that. Our focus, our value added, is spending time finding deals and matching the money. And really, as a professional property investor, that's what you do. The rest of it, the whole managing the portfolio, dealing with tenants, that all has to happen in the background. You know, that is as systemized as we can possibly do it. We don't spend any time on that. You know, we focus on growing the group as a whole.
And which basically comes down to finding the deals and raising the money.
Yeah, and I think like if we're talking, you know, if there's guys like listening in and they're looking for a bit of guidance and they're struggling to get, you know, the first private investor and all that, do like, people aren't going to come in, or it's very unlikely that people are going to loan you money on an unsecured basis the first time you're going to do a deal with them, right? But so by giving them this security and giving them the numbers like I talked through, valued at 60, buying at 25, you know, by providing that security, it should be, it should allow you to jump that hurdle, really.
Yeah.
When you're starting out.
Did you personal guarantees on your original loans you took out from private investors?
I think we did actually back in the
day.
You never knew what you signed, Laurie.
No, I didn't.
You didn't tell your wife that at the wedding, did you? On the wedding night. By the way, you're marrying me. Your house is going to be on the line here because we are just basically doing this deal. And if it goes tits up, then we're losing our house.
We're in for about 7 million in lending, so the house has gone several times over now. We're beyond that point, you know. But yeah, it was a fair point actually, and it was the solicitors that pushed the PGs, and we just kind of went with it. But we subsequently dropped it because the reality is for the investor as well, it gives them very little protection. You know, if you're dealing with professional investors like us who genuinely have to sign these PGs with a bank for millions, then they're worthless because there's nothing left. You know, I mean, it's the main protection is the asset, which is the property, the first charge security. And as long as there's no bond and floating charge over the company, your first charge security is solid, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is like. I mean, you said yourself there, Stephen. You know, you've brought a few things to me to invest in, and you know, I've got this money sitting in the bank, and I just can't bring myself to do it. I don't know. I keep thinking because, you know, you're maybe offering me whatever it is, a set amount. I'm thinking surely I should be doing that as well. So I'm trying to find these amazing deals, but I guess not everybody's going to be like that. There's going to be people there that don't really have the kind of knowledge, or they don't know about the BRRR and all that sort of stuff, and they're literally just like hemorrhaging money because their money's basically eroding away in their bank account because obviously inflation now is a factor. So that cash sitting there is just like devaluing. So they're better getting it into something in property where they can get 6% or something.
You're giving the sales pitch to yourself here, but you're still not fucking doing it.
I'm still trying to convince myself, mate.
Laurie, how would you go about convincing him? Because I think you're better at this than me. How would you convince him?
Look, man, if you need the security, we can give you the security. But I would rather, we're either paying you more interest or we're paying the solicitors for the cost of the legal work. I would much rather pay you 10% APR and pay you all the interest and not pay any solicitors. Don't need solicitor involvement for unsecured loans. So loan it to us.
I like that.
We're always looking for money.
Stevie's only given 6% and you're giving 10%. I know where I'm putting my money.
That's brilliant. I think, are you still giving security against the deals? I'm assuming if you're giving security, you're having to match one investor versus one property each time to give the security.
Much tougher that way, yeah. I mean, that's where the unsecured gives you the flexibility, especially now we're really focused on portfolio deals. So, most of the money that we have in our portfolio is unsecured cash loans to the business. We pay 10% APR. As Laurie said, it just gives you much more flexibility. Otherwise, the investor's waiting for you to match it to a property. It can take longer to get the money in play. And then you're refinancing after maybe 6 months. Okay, maybe it takes 9. Not for us now, to be fair, because we're on portfolio lending. We've got refinances going through now on stuff we don't even own because there's no limitation.
So so right now, are you guys buying with the Bank of Scotland's backing, or are you going for short-term lending in the meantime to buy, purchase, renovate, and then going back to the Bank of Scotland to do an exit product?
No, effectively we're purchasing either with cash or bridging or a combination of both. But the cash doesn't have to be ours. It's basically like unsecured cash combined with bridging. So you're getting 100% of your purchase price. We don't have to fund anything ourselves. No money down deals and all that. But basically, by the time we kind of get in and do the work via REWD building codes, we've got on the go that does all the maintenance and refurbs and all that. Then we can refinance at that stage once the work's done. But I mean, sometimes the work isn't even, sometimes there's not even a lot of work to be done. You can still flip the finance or whatever.
Can we talk a little bit about risk, right? Because obviously with that 80 property portfolio that, that came to you and you're like, right, okay, we need to obviously do a bit of due diligence here, do a bit of sort of finding out what these properties are like, but there's no way that you could have gone round all 80 properties, and I presume most of them would have been tenanted and access problems and all the rest of it. Now that would obviously scare a lot of people buying properties that they haven't seen. So what kind of due diligence and sort of risk factors were you thinking about when you were kind of trying to assess everything? Can you go into a little bit about that, about the portfolio?
Well, in hindsight, and I'll let Alex respond more fully because he's the due diligence man, but in hindsight, it was in our interests not to see some of this stuff. Because now we're in and we're figuring it out. There's all sorts of shit. But look, it's 82 units, right? So you're going to need to deal with some kiss a few frogs and all that. But no, we done an analysis. It was a percentage analysis. I mean, even the surveys that got done, they didn't go into every property. But you're looking at that as a whole. I mean, that portfolio produces 35 grand a month gross rental income. So it's like, well, okay, take the rough with the smooth. That was our general view, I think. But Alex, you've done a bit of due diligence in terms of the market appraisal and the addresses, the values, and all that.
I think you're doing a lot of the due diligence you would on an individual deal. It's just that obviously the viewing side of it's more challenging, but all the information that you need for your due diligence is online, and it gets even easier when you're buying a portfolio because it's normally a company that owns it. So you can pull all this extra stuff off company's house and get a feel for the profitability of the business, essentially the profitability of the portfolio. The main thing is you want to be pulling bank statements to see that all the rent's coming in, and they don't have excessive outgoings on maintenance or whatever.
And at any point, did they tell you why they were selling the portfolio, or is that something you find out later on?
No. I mean, these guys were clear. They have a successful AV business, and they wanted to focus on that. They were running it themselves. Was running them into the ground, I think. And they weren't managing it properly. They weren't professional property investors. They were just a couple of guys that had accumulated some properties at auction over a few years, and it was draining the life out of them. You could see, and it was massive. It must have been a massive strain on them because none of these properties were compliant. No EICRs, no. Anyway, that's where the 60k front end cost came, because we had to get all that up to standard before we could buy it. So, and
let's just tell people as well, you've got a letting agent, you've got a managing agent to deal with all your properties who pretty much just, I would imagine with 200 units, pretty much you might be their only client. Are you sort of that sort of scale of things?
Not far off actually. But, I think the main thing for Laurie and I, as I said, was to systemize everything that we see as non-core and dealing with tenant issues and chasing up rent and all that. It's not where our skills lie. So, we had an agent from day one. He's very good at what he does. He's allowed us to scale at the rate we have, because if he can't take on the properties, then, we don't want to be dealing with multiple agents, then it gets much more complicated. A lot of people talk about gold mine area and the fact that you have to invest in a specific area, get your support team around it. We've managed to go a bit broader than that because we have a good solid agent that's willing to support us, and we have the REWD Building Co team to support with all the maintenance and stuff. It gives us a bit more flexibility. You couldn't scale at the rate we are by sticking to one little area. It'd be impossible.
Yeah, I think like as folk are getting started, it's like good practice to like know your area and have this gold mine area. But as Alex says, there's no chance we could scale if we didn't kind of let go of that, So where initially, we were buying in our local area, Falkirk and Grangemouth and surrounding areas, but again, became very, if a deal's a deal, like, you buy it. Like, what does it matter? As long as you've got somebody or you've got the systems and processes in place and you get paid your rent, that's all I'm bothered about. We've not seen half the properties that we own now, because we just don't care. We want somebody else to manage all that. We're just thinking investor level,
I like that. Yeah, I really like that. Let's take it back a wee bit, guys, as well. Like, how did you manage to cash flow while you scaled up? Because as we know, when you're kind of growing and starting out, buy-to-let portfolios don't exactly produce the massive amount of cash to go and jack your jobs immediately and stuff like that. And there's a lot of refurbs and maintenance repairs and tenant issues and tenant voids that comes in that would fucking affect your wage effectively. So how did you get through that growth period of cash flow?
That's an interesting one, and actually it's one of the big advantages of buying portfolios because they come with tenants in situ. Now the downside of that is not always the tenants that you want. If I look at the tenant issues that we have and the ones that we've handpicked through our portfolio we've built up ourselves, very, very few issues. The ones that we've purchased with tenants in situ, that's where more of our issues are. But we're buying that portfolio of 82 properties. If you had to buy that with vacant possession, you'd have a massive hole in your financials every month. Whereas we're buying it rent day one. You take a retention on purchase because there's usually a time frame to transfer all the rents, speak to the council, make sure they're transferring the rent to you rather than the previous owner and all that sort of stuff. But that's why you maybe hold a couple of months worth of rent from the acquisition to cover yourself and then make sure that transition happens smoothly. But that gives you cash flow day one. It helps. And that was always the intention with Lanarkshire. We were never doing any major refurb and refinance in a short period of time. It was going to be, we'll cash flow the refurb work we need to do through a longer period of time through the cash flow from the deal. So that has helped massively. In fact, our buy-to-let portfolio really finances, because it's cash in the bank every month, it really finances all the other stuff we're doing in the group between the building company and all the projects there and the development stuff on Falkirk High Street. So that's been a major upside.
Well, we guys, when we came up and met you guys, and you've got to say you've got an impressive setup there up in Grangemouth in your new unit. And when we came up and met you, you were still employed. Are you still employed just now? Are you?
Aye, we're actually both still employed. But
you managed to get out of that.
Our latest line when people ask that question, because everybody asks it and everybody's always baffled, but our latest line is that we have relaxed working conditions with our employers.
Brilliant.
But hey, look, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to, one, make hay when the sun shines, and two, milk it until you've got it, right? I mean, who wouldn't take advantage of that situation if they had it? So
absolutely, aye. If the employers want to pay it, and I'm assuming you guys are doing something bare minimum to keep your employment ongoing.
Alex is. Aye.
We can always cut that bit if you want.
That's right.
No, that's cool.
Right, but then this release, you'll be sacked anyway.
Probably. Yeah, long way to continue though. I mean, I think we're ready to kind of make the move anyway. You know what I mean? It's obviously been a kind of long time coming, but we're just we've both got young babies. Our wives are on maternity leave. There's a bigger picture at play, and the longer we can not have to extract money from the business, the better. So yeah, it'll come. It's just a question of time.
So like, it's an interesting relationship, obviously, how you guys, are working together on that. And you're both like, you're really like chalk and cheese in terms of your characters. You're quite different just from the time that I've met you. So in terms of your roles within the business, like, if you both play to your strengths, like how would you describe it when you're working day to day with each other?
It's funny,
Massively.
we've never really, it's never something we've discussed. You know, we've never ever sat down and said, you'll do this and I'll do that. We just naturally gravitate to the things we're good at, and they're quite polarized, so it just works. You know, we've never had to have a conversation because we just know where we fit in, and that's it. You know, and you know, a few people have asked, you know, who's in charge, who's a managing director, and we've never felt the need to really align that. You know, it's just like we work together collectively on our own skills, and you know, Laurie spends more time with Connor, BDM, you know, making sure that we're focused there on growth of the business. I spend probably more time reviewing the performance, the financial performance of our portfolios, of the building company, tracking project costs, seeing where we're at. You know, those are just the skills that we have, and that's what we focus on.
And yeah, it's sorry, Stevie.
May go for it.
Oh, sorry, you're breaking up there. Say that again, mate.
Sorry, mate, go for it. I just interrupted you there.
Oh no, sorry, it was breaking up there when you were saying. I can't remember what I was going to say now.
We're just talking about the business and relationship between you two guys.
Aye. So basically, like Alex is a qualified accountant, right? He knows all the numbers. He thinks about numbers. He thinks about forecasting and planning and all that type of stuff. You know, I've always been in sales and business development, so I'm always thinking about growth and opportunity and the next deal and all that type of thing. So it's really funny the way it's ended up, because you know, we could have kind of went into business with anybody, but like we naturally just kind of fell into it together because of that deal that we bought for 25 grand, and then that finance thing at his wedding, and then you know, it's just kind of happened. But yeah,
are you going to be emotionally attached to that first deal? Are you going to keep it forever, or will it just be a number and be sold when it comes up, when it needs to be sold? Or
we don't really think about selling. Like we've no intention of selling anything, to be fair. You know, we just want to continually grow and grow and grow. Buy to let is mega. You know, we have nothing to do with it really, and you know, it just produces cash. So I mean, when the time comes, you know, if we're exiting, we're selling off for whatever reason, I don't think there's any emotional attachment there.
No, the reason I was asking is I'm selling off properties solely in my own personal name. And I'm selling my first ever property I purchased in 2006. My missus was like, "You never sell that. It's the one that started." And I'm like, "I've got no emotional attachment to property. It's all numbers to me now. Like, it's just, I'm like selling a fucking own house now while the market's so hot." But she was
like, that's where you took me back after our first date. You can't sell that.
It was. It was. The place was a fucking building site at the time.
Tell her you took somebody else back first, and she'll not have any problem with you selling it.
Then she'll definitely want me to sell it.
Right, guys, I think we should probably, like, because I think we've gone through this interview, right, but we've not really kind of given people context of the actual kind of operation that you're running here. You know, we've talked about this portfolio, we've talked about the buy-to-lets and all the rest of it, but we want to give people a little bit of teaser, because we're actually going to do like a 3-part series with you guys, because you've got so much shit going on and a lot of good value to give people. So just into REWD Group, love the branding, love the idea. You guys are blasting yourselves all over social media. So what is it, you know, like, give us the structure of what's all happening in REWD Group.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's property investment, development, building, and training. You know, and all property investment and development, all these other businesses we're bringing into the group structure as well. They all kind of complement one or the other. We've talked mainly here about residential buy-to-let. We do have 2 HMOs that are fully operational. We've got another HMO that, in fact, we just came from before we joined this call, which is mega. It's a restaurant conversion to 10-bedroom HMO. It's just about finished. We've got tenants lined up, ready to occupy, and that should generate us what is it, $7,500 a month gross rent just off that one asset. Now that's been a big problem actually, for a lot of different reasons, you know. But we do have a few HMOs, and we're buying a few more actually. And the developments business is focused on commercial to residential conversion of retail empty upper floor space on mainly Falkirk High Street. So we've got 5 projects on Falkirk High Street with GDV 6 million plus. The building company was really born because of all the problems we were having in finding good build teams, reliability, control over costs, efficiency, quality. So we brought that into the mix as well at the end of last year. So loads of kind of different strings to REWD Group Bow, you know, and we're always looking for more opportunities too. So watch this space.
I'm dead jealous because you've got your maintenance, you know, your building team there and all that. And I just think that must be such a luxury at this time when I can't even get a painter. I'm phoning up painters. They're telling me 2 months until they can get to the actual job. That's until they can get to price it. And then another 2 months till they can actually do it. Do you know what I mean?
Listen, as Alex will tell you, you've got to take the rough with the smooth, right? There's pros and cons. If you've seen the condition of 60B, which is this 10-bedroom HMO conversion I'm talking about, yes, the guys are there. Yes, they're full pelt, but you know, we've had a COVID breakout and we lost weeks, and it's taken a bit longer, and the costs gone through the roof. And yeah,
this is what I love about you, Laurie, as well, because I got a really good, from the first time that I met you there, I got a real good feeling that you don't give us bullshit and you're very honest. So we appreciate you, you know, because it's easy for you to come on and just talk about all the kind of highs and the stuff that's all going well. But like you've just alluded to there's a lot of shit that goes on in the background as well.
Aye, and look, the more deals you're doing, the more shit you've got to deal with, right? I mean, we look, at the end of the day, everybody's got problems. You know, we're dealing with so many different problems. So many different projects are delayed. You know, we've got issues with building warrants and the big stuff. We've got issues with council planning process has actually been pretty good. But oh man, you're just constantly firefighting, and it only gets kind of busier in that regard the bigger you grow. But we've got staff now as well, right? We've got Connor, our BDM, we've got Emma, our marketing executive, we've got Jennifer, our admin manager. We're looking at taking on another member of staff, and that'll be it though, I think. 20 guys in the building co, and so all these things, even the maintenance. Nick, you'll know about that. The maintenance of the buy-to-let, unbelievable. We took over that because it's better we're in control. But I mean, that is like a business in itself, man.
Absolutely.
And we don't know what we're doing with all that yet. We're trying to figure stuff out. We're looking at loads of different ideas, but it's like every single day, man.
You were even building your own kitchens there, weren't you? When we were up, you had in the workshop.
Yeah, that's been a great one actually for us. It's probably saved us saved the budget on a few projects actually, because you know, you're talking about best case scenario where your cheapest housings, you're talking $3,000 installed on a decent sized kitchen, and we're able to do it for less than $1,000 with our own. And one, it's beechwood ply, so it's more durable. You know, it's harder for the tenants to kick it to pieces. And if they do, it's easy to replace an individual unit because the guys can knock it together in the workshop in, you know, a matter of minutes. And then it's just painted. You know, it's a durable paint, obviously, but you know, it's easy to touch up when the tenants leave. You know, it's bomb-proof. It's perfect for the rentals. Really perfect. And when you see one of them, I can't remember if we showed you the finished article on one of them, but when you see them finished, you know, you wouldn't know. They look great.
Never mind the magnet trade LMPG. I'll be going to REWD Group for my kitchens next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too right.
Brilliant, guys. I'm excited to have you on again for the next part when we discuss something else. God knows what it'll be because you've got so much else to discuss.
No, definitely, yeah. No, it's been brilliant. Thanks for having us on, and look forward to the next one for sure.
So obviously, you know, you're very active on social media. Laurie's the man in front of the camera a lot of time, aren't you, Laurie? You do most of the videos, don't you? Alex, you kind of sit in the background there a bit more.
Laurie's more photogenic than I am.
So obviously, give people where they can go and find you. Obviously, where's the best place?
I think like most of the stuff we're doing now, I think is on Facebook, right? So it's just REWD Group, at REWD Group, which is REWD Group. Yeah, I mean, we're both on social media. What's all the other channels? I don't even. The guys are taking care of this now because I don't really get this.
The website's probably the main one as well. So it's www.rewdgroup.co.uk.
Yeah,
and as Laurie says, REWD.
We'll put that in the show.
We'll link all these in the show notes, and everyone can reach out to you guys.
But I tell you one thing, right? Don't be this weird, random social media guy that just connects, and I don't know who you are, because like we get folk from like Ghana and like Australia and like fucking Boston. Like, what? Who are these people? You know, like send us a message or something so we know who you are. Because I don't add them half the time because my missus gets really freaked out if all these folk are like liking pictures of my son. You know.
But on the social media front, Laurie, we talked about this last time. I mean, you guys, because you're kind of, you've built up a reputation for yourself locally now because you're pretty well known because of the videos, the social media and that. You were saying that, you know, opportunities are naturally coming to you as well because of that. So that's something people should think about as well.
Again, pros and cons, right? I really don't like social media, but it's like part of it's business in 2021. You need to do it and all that kind of stuff. But you're right, you know, the more that we're putting ourselves out there, the more credibility, the more of a presence. You know, investors are turning up at the unit, like, just, hey man, saw your video the other day, want to invest a couple of $100,000. You free for a coffee? Come on in, sir. So, aye, totally, man. It's again, it's all good stuff. You know, we need to do it. It's just a frustration because I don't know, we don't like it. You know.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that, mate. It's a necessary evil, unfortunately, in business.
That's it.
Superb, guys. Like, we'll link all these the website and your social media channels on the show notes as well, and we look forward to having you next on.
So hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I know myself and Stephen definitely did, and I think there's a lot still that we can get out of Alex and Laurie, definitely.
Yeah, we love chats like that. I love chats like that. I love big thinking and people that are going to go and make the waves, and they've got huge aspirations to want to try and, you know, have 1,000 properties in their portfolio, their next goal is and stuff like that. And that's brilliant. You know,
I think it's definitely a mindset thing as well because you know, they've obviously had the balls just to go and do that after only being involved in property for a couple of years. To have the balls to go and sit in a meeting with you know, some guys and say, right, we will do this deal, and they didn't even have the funding in place either. You know, that's that takes.
I found the conversation brilliant as well when Laurie's talking about Alex offering, you know, first charge security at his wedding on the first kind of private investor deal they used, and Laurie didn't have a clue about what first charge security was. Like, that's exactly what you say, is that they've got this bigger vision, this bigger picture, that they're going to go for it, and they're going to figure the rest of the shit out as they go, which I think is brilliant. It's really good.
Good. All right. Well, hope you're all buzzing after that. And as always, guys, if you want to tag us on our Instagram, then please do so. Head over to the Facebook page where we'll help you out if we can, answer any questions. And as always, thanks for your support and see you again next week.
Great. Thanks for listening.